Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar today. This is Polly Traylor with OpsRamp, and we are second in a new series for us called Ramp Chats, in which we are going to be interviewing people inside and outside of the company on pertinent topics in IT. Today I have with me Mark Hilliard with Beyond20, and we will introduce him live here in just a moment. If you are not familiar with OpsRamp, we are a hybrid IT infrastructure discovery and monitoring platform powered by artificial intelligence. So today we're going to talk about DevOps, certainly not a new topic, but one that's continuing to be super important in IT organizations and in software companies around the world. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're at in the DevOps journey, what impact, if any, COVID-19 is having on DevOps initiatives in companies. Collaboration is always a hot topic, no easy answer. Mark's going to get into some tactics around that. What to do when your DevOps journey gets stuck or you want to move faster. And we'll end up with some advice on enabling technologies. Also, please do keep in mind that we would love to have questions from the audience. So if you have a question, you can use the chat tool to submit that, and we will have some time at the end for one or two questions. So do send your questions in. Again, we won't do those till the end. So awesome. Well, listen, Mark, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Polly. So my name is Mark Hilliard. I'm with Beyond20. We are a digital transformation based consultancy in the Washington, D.C. area, though we have offices all across the country. We primarily help organizations digitally transform their IT operations and IT service management practices, and work in the assessment and training field as well. And we are a partner with OpsRamp.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Thanks for the intro there. And Mark, let's jump right into it. So DevOps, I guess, going back a little bit in the last few years, how would you say things have changed with DevOps? And you can go at this at any number of angles: maturity or challenges, or maybe even new definitions of DevOps. And what would you say?
Sure. DevOps is older than some people think. It's actually been around since around 2009, which was when the first DevOps Days was held. And I think a lot of organizations are really just now starting to get kind of ramped up on DevOps itself, on the whole thing. I think one of the primary challenges that a lot of organizations have had since its inception is, what does it mean to do DevOps? And I think that, a basic understanding of what DevOps means is important for every organization before they start on that journey. And that is to say that DevOps is primarily about automating as much as you can between ideation and operations of any service or product, but also this idea of bringing development and operations closer. And it's kind of cliche, but that's where the term comes from, is that development and operations need to be working closer together. We need to break down the silos that have traditionally caused bottlenecks, but also caused a lot of issues in stability and velocity on both ends of the spectrum. In the last few years, I think a lot of organizations have seen the velocity increase that DevOps has promised. In that, early on, because DevOps really came out of the development world, all the tools and the automation were very development oriented. How do we get our ideas and our enhancements and all of this stuff into production faster? How do we increase the number of deployments, our cadence, all of those things? And what was kind of left behind a little bit was the other side of it, the operational piece. And so organizations in the last few years, since the early adopters and kind of the pioneers of it, I think have had to struggle a little bit more to bring operations into the fold. Because, I'm a lifelong operator. I worked in IT operations for a couple of decades, and somebody told me I had to change the way I work and start talking more to developers. I was like, no, it's okay, I'm good. So it's a big culture shift, and I think now companies are seeing the benefits of the higher velocity and the greater cadence that successful DevOps organizations are having, and so they jump on that bandwagon, but they're missing that ops piece. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges to being successful at DevOps that we have today.
Absolutely. And, surveys continue to show that organizations are still really struggling with bringing those two disciplines together, and that the DevOps journey is harder than anyone had ever imagined. We're going to jump into those challenges a little bit deeper in a minute, but I wanted to kind of bring us up to present day. We are 6 months into COVID-19, or maybe longer, depending upon how you define that, here in the US anyway. And I'm wondering, what does that mean for DevOps? I've seen some surveys saying that DevOps is actually accelerating right now, or companies are going to be moving faster. And then others, we're putting everything on hold except for what we absolutely need to do right now, and that is to keep our critical systems running. In a way, it's like, are we saying the same thing? same thing here. What do you think? Is DevOps going to be benefiting from this right now, or continuing to slow down?
I think that the promise of DevOps, the potential that exists in DevOps right now is immense. And I know that a lot of organizations are struggling to do anything new. Right, that most of us are just starting to still figure out how to mute ourselves during breaks on Zoom meetings. It's still a brave new world, right? We don't have we're not all in our offices, we're not all in our nice comfy chairs, we're all at home trying to makeshift home offices, and I think that has probably hampered the maturity of DevOps in a lot of organizations. But I still think organizations right now are pushing very hard, because at the end of the day, DevOps is a human culture shift. There is a lot of enabling technology. Automation is such a big part of DevOps. But the idea behind DevOps is human collaboration. And now that we're all, remote, we're not sitting in the same room together, we're not sitting even in the same buildings together anymore, where we can just easily get together and have a quick little meeting. The need for collaboration, the need for this kind of shift in thinking, I think, is more critical than ever.
Yep, for sure. Well, let's go into some really the meat of our discussion today. And we all hear this working in this industry, that dev and ops, DevOps, IT ops, there are challenges, there are conflicts. And I'd love to get a little bit, really, from your perspective, what is the primary issue here that is impeding these groups to work effectively together? Is it turf wars? Is it tools? Is it not having a leader at the top really getting everybody to do this? What would you say?
Well, I think all of those are contributory. Certainly. As I said, I was a lifelong IT operations guy, system administrator for years and years in some very large organizations, and we never got along with developers. That was just, that it was like you came in and you got your I'm an operator card, and I'm not allowed to be friends with any developers. You had to sign a little thing and take an oath and all that. And so the reality, of course, though, is that Dev and Ops historically have had competing objectives, right? Operations, always about availability, always about uptime, always about stability in the environment. And development is all about disruption. Their entire, their charter, but from the company, is make new cool things. And that made it very difficult for the two sides to kind of get along. However, at the end of the day, operations is nothing without innovation, and development is nothing without stability. And I think that is where, the pioneers of the movement saw that we really did need to get together and start talking. And stop fighting each other. I think today, though, the real challenge, because operators have realized it, developers have realized it. We can't keep moving farther apart. We have to get closer together. But I think the big challenge that we've seen in the last few years is a skills gap. Developers are taking on the ownership of products, the full stack ownership. They're really trying to push the envelope as far as being responsible for finding and fixing bugs, and making sure that their environments are stable, and that the whole pipeline is well established and understood. And operators want to be there with them, but operators are being expected to become sort of developers. They're having to do coding. They're having to actually get involved in the development side of the products that they support. And the reality is that most of us who got into IT operations weren't coders. We weren't developers. Can I write some code? Sure, I can, but that's not what I was brought in to do. So it wasn't the skill that I developed in operations over years and years of working. And what we're seeing is that while IT infrastructures are getting monumentally more complex, data is getting larger, systems are becoming smaller and more ephemeral, infrastructure as code, all of this new stuff that we are, as operators, we're being expected to support on top of learning an entirely new skill. And that is a difficult leap to make. And right now, I don't think the space is being made to allow operators to do that in a lot of organizations. So they're lagging, and it's hurting development because the developers are doing more operational stuff, but they can't depend on the operators to handle bug fix development the way that DevOps really intends it to be.
Yep. And when you say that operators are not being given the space to learn these skills, I think that's what you said. What exactly do you mean? Meaning that they literally don't have time, or that they're not getting support from above?
I think it's more of a support question. We can all say, and we probably all have at some point, I don't have time to learn something new. I'm too busy working, right? We all have that issue. It's a matter of the entire operational structure. I think. I don't know that it's just leadership. I think it goes top to bottom. Even operators themselves are not giving themselves enough time and enough space. They're saying that, right? I'm too busy. I don't have time to learn anything new. I saw a great cartoon last week. It was these, it was cavemen. It was like an old BC cartoon, but it was these two guys dragging a wagon with square wheels, and there's another caveman behind them with a round wheel, and the caption says, we don't have time for your invention. We're too busy. And it's like, if you just took this one, if you did this one thing, it would make your life so much better. And yes, it would take you time, and you'd have to stop what you're doing right now. You have to stop dragging this wagon, but once you got the wheel on, you would catch up so much faster. And, I think the operational side really hasn't caught on to that yet. And it's partly because we have spent so many years being the firefighters, right? It's the urgent over the important. And I think that without really making that mind shift, I think that's where probably most organizations are struggling today.
And even though we hear that operators don't like being firefighters, surely some of them do. I mean, maybe, I don't know, I've never had that job, but maybe it's kind of fun to be the hero. Do you think there's a worry that I want to still be the hero, and now you're making me do things that maybe I don't want to do, or they sound maybe
I
scary?
Think there's absolutely an aspect of that. The crisis hero mentality is certainly prevalent in operations. I'm gonna swoop in at the last possible moment and save the day. Sure, the superhero cape fits very well on the operator's back. And yeah, it's absolutely true to say, well, you have to stop that, and we have to make your life easier. In retrospect, in the quiet moments, every operator would be like, well, of course that's what I want. But then, the next crisis comes along, and they're like, I'm coming in and I'm going to save the day. So yeah, it is like I said, it's a huge culture shift and mental shift for everyone in the organization. And I think that is an issue for operators right now.
Yeah. And wouldn't you also say a little bit on the development side too, like their heroic moments are, we're going to get this update done in record time. And, the speed, the being able to show how productive you are could also be an impediment for the same sector.
Absolutely. It's organizations that are adopting the DevOps culture are seeing that. You always have the overachievers. They exist in every organization, and you love them because they swoop in and they do amazing things. They work 900 hours a week to get this project back on its feet or out the door or whatever, and it's great. The problem with that is that kind of heroic work, and that's true on development and operations, usually results in substandard product. And so without sort of establishing a more appropriate cadence, reducing what DevOps calls work in progress, right? All the stuff that's just queued up waiting to get done. It's really important for both developers and operators to recognize that actually is not a good way to go. It's not. It's the heroic effort. We've said it in service management for years, and DevOps, certainly in its core believes it. The heroic effort is not the way to be successful. It's the way to get burnout and lose good people.
Yeah, and this probably sounds cliche, but it seems like a critical thing here is that business lens, that we're all working together to solve a business or a customer problem, which is the most important thing, not being a hero or being the most productive developer or operator on the team, but really avoiding situations that affect the customer. So maybe that goes back to that leadership, VPs of engineering doing enough.
Yeah, and I mean that's for any organization to answer for itself. I can't say that I know that organizations aren't getting that buy-in at the leadership level. I mean, that's always, we talk about all of these, all of the frameworks and methodologies and value systems that exist in the new world of IT today. All of them will tell you it's a top-down idea, right? That if we don't have buy-in at the top, if we don't have commitment from leadership, it's gonna be a horribly uphill battle, and likely it's going to fail somewhere in the middle, and then everyone's going to blame the methodology and not how we were implementing it. And that's true of DevOps as well. I mean, it's one of those things where if you don't have, if not everybody's in, especially at the top, how do you actually get anyone in the middle or at the bottom to do anything? You can't change my mind if the person signing my paycheck doesn't believe in the new mindset, or
doesn't seem to care enough, maybe. Yeah, very good. Okay, so I guess organizations, many that may be on the call right now, are doing DevOps, and they might be doing pretty well, and then they've plateaued, or maybe they are stuck for some of the issues that we brought up. I guess, what's a good way to restart or to get some more momentum? Do you recommend bringing someone in from the outside, or do you recommend bringing in new skill sets? I don't know. What would you recommend to a client that was asking how to move to the next level of maturity in DevOps?
Well, I think the first thing that any organization that's kind of stuck in the mud, so to speak, in that quicksand, the first specific organizational advice I would give is slow down. Ironically, what the problem with quicksand is, the harder you try, the more you get stuck and you start sinking. And, first get rid of, DevOps comes out of lean manufacturing, right? It comes out of the Toyota manufacturing and the Japanese manufacturing ideals of the mid-20th century. And everything about lean is about getting rid of waste, is removing wasteful steps, removing wasteful processes, seeing where you can actually streamline what you're doing. And if you're stuck moving into what should be a highly streamlined mindset, take another look. Stop what you're doing and look at the process and see where the bottlenecks exist. That's what DevOps is trying to eliminate. That's, getting rid of the silo, bridging that gap between development and operations is all about removing the bottlenecks of passing things over the wall. We've been doing it for decades, and it's throw the grenade over there and hope that the blowback doesn't hurt you. And I think that if your DevOps journey is stuck, the very first thing I would do is just stop, take a look, do a self-assessment. What are we doing? Organizations adopt DevOps in different ways, and no one's saying that there's one specifically right way to adopt DevOps. They're just, it's like most things, there's a lot of different paths to becoming successful with it. But if you're finding that it's not going well, operations isn't accepting it, development is angry, everyone's frustrated, nothing's actually getting done, the metrics aren't improving, look at your process. Look at how you're getting, are you getting to continuous integration? Are you building a pipeline that ultimately can have, the whole CI/CD thing, and you can automate the testing and you can get things out? Did you start with just buying tools and not do anything else? There are really cool, fun tools out there to support DevOps, lots of great technology, and I recommend a lot of them wholeheartedly. You should absolutely be using them. But something I say very frequently, I can automate a bad process. It just means I get a bad process faster and more consistently. So yeah, stop and look at what you're doing. Get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter, that isn't bringing value to the pipeline. If it isn't bringing value, why are you doing it?
Right. So slow down and reassess to ultimately move faster. That makes sense. So you just talked about technologies, tools, everybody's favorite discussion. Let's talk a little bit about that. I guess, as you said, there's so many different tools, and then there's ones that cross over. There's DevOps, there's IT Ops, there's any number of tools that we use to get software produced. And I'm wondering, what capabilities should organizations be looking for now? Are there some new capabilities, changes, I don't know, artificial intelligence, automation, what have you, that we really need to factor into our tool set today and moving into the next year?
I absolutely think so. It's interesting because DevOps is over a decade old. It's 2009, and the very first tools that came out were all supportive of releasing code. Right? How do we shorten the release time? How do we get more deployments out? How do we make that pipeline streamlined? I could, off the top of my head, name 4 or 5 tools that were designed 10 years ago to do that. Again, this goes back to my whole idea that ops got left behind. IT ops, or ITOM, AI ops, this whole vertical within the industry is 3 years old. We didn't have it. The term AI ops was coined in 2017 by Gartner. That's a 7-year head start that Dev has on this. There are definitely very good tools out there, and I definitely, I'm a partner with you with OpsRamp, and I think OpsRamp is a great ITOM tool. I think that its machine learning capabilities are amazing. And it does bring the operations piece into it. One of the big things is I think it helps the skills gap out immensely, because the more you can actually automate, especially, the time-consuming, mundane, repeatable, what we call toil activities, the more you can automate that, the more time your operators actually do have to create, to create the space to improve their skill set and become more supportive of the whole DevOps mindset. And so if you can get into that space, if you can find a tool, if you get a tool that actually helps reduce that toil on the operations side, you're going to jettison yourself forward. It will be a monumental shift for you. You will see results as soon as that tool is actually properly configured and operating. The results will be astonishing, I think.
Yeah. So don't be afraid of automation. It's not going to get rid of the job, right?
No. I mean, that's not what these tools are meant to do. They are meant to enable us to be more efficient and to elevate our skill level and make ourselves more valuable. At the end of the day, I mean, the reality is you can teach a lot of people how to reset a password. It's not super high skill work. You want people who are high skill and can do high value work, and automation actually enables people to become those. Because I can't imagine there's an organization out there that's like, boy, what I'd really prefer to do is go out and hire a bunch of people who don't know my company rather than promote from within.
Sure.
Show me an organization that thinks that's a great idea. I don't think there are very many of those out there. So the ability of an operator to elevate their skill level, become more high value to the organization is enabled by technology. They're not being hampered. They're not being forced out of a job because, we brought in OpsRamp to take care of the mundane incidents where a web server has to get rebooted every 3 hours. Like, that's not going to get you out of a job. I think it's a good thing. I think every operator should embrace it.
Great. Okay, this was fantastic. Mark, we're going to move into our Q&A section here, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to grab a sip of water. And looks like we do have a few questions here, and I'm going to give everybody one more opportunity to ask the question if you like. And let's go back. Okay. Let's see. Here's a long question. I am a big Gene Kim fan. For a lot of people, the Phoenix Project was a great entree into the new world. What are you reading now? Where do you go to learn and get the new skills that are needed from an operations perspective? Let's start with that, and then this is a three-part question.
Also a big Gene Kim fan, personally. Interestingly enough, as he is, I think a lot of people almost consider him one of the, if not the godfather of DevOps in a lot of ways. The Phoenix Project is a spectacular read. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. His new book, I think, is equally awesome, The Unicorn Project, which just came out earlier this year. I think that, and I recently read that, so I think those are really good entry level introductions, I should say. I mean, they're fiction, which is interesting, makes them easier to read. I think reading manuals does tend to get a little, sort of boring, unless you're just somebody who loves to read manuals, and that's okay too. There is a lot out there right now around DevOps. I think there is a lot of really good writing. I think there's a lot of sort of questionable writing. I would say, if you go and you go to places like DevOps.com, they will give you great resources to go out and help you on your know an operations side. The first thing I would say is, know what programming languages your organization uses. If you're an operator, know what programming languages are being used in your organization, and then go learn one of them. It's one of those things. I can tell you to do this in your spare time, and I hope that you're in an organization that gives you the space to learn this sort of thing on your own. Maybe during work hours, maybe while you're home, it's actually a little easier. But I would say, that's a big, that's going to get you in a lot of doors. If you're looking to elevate your game to some extent on the operations side, developing your development skills, developing your coding skills is probably the number one thing you should be doing. If you've already got the coding skills in place, I would say that what you should be doing is learning the ins and outs of all of the tools that are currently being used and those tools that are out there that may actually not be, if you're not automating right now, the pipeline for development or the operations side. I would say take some time and start researching some of those tools. Find, if your company's using Jenkins or Chef or whatever, start to really learn those things. As an operator, the end of the day, our job is still primarily availability, right? We want things to be available and stable, period. That is our number one and maybe our only goal at the end of the day. And all of these things, all of these tools are part of that infrastructure, which means we still have to support them as well as know how to use them. And so I think that's that's where you really can start to make yourself more valuable, is not only how to, make sure that, that Docker's running, but also that you can actually function within that framework or within that platform effectively and understand how it interacts with other parts of your infrastructure.
Okay, great. We have a couple more questions. We'll see if we can rip through these. New set of metrics organizations should be tracking right now.
Wow, new metrics organizations. It's interesting.
New set of metrics that organizations should be tracking.
Oh, a new set of metrics organizations should be tracking now. Ironically, again, I think that the biggest metric is still going to be based on mean time to resolve and availability numbers. What is your uptime? That's still probably the number one metric, even for DevOps. Is still probably the number one metric. Obviously, velocity and cadence are a big deal. So deployment velocity, how many successful deployments? Again, very important to use that key, that qualifier. Successful deployments are you getting out every month? The aim of DevOps is to increase the number of successful deployments and create a better cadence. It's not only to move faster. That's the other thing that I think people think that, DevOps is just about being faster. Yes, faster is one of the benefits, but it's not about just putting out new code faster. It's about being able to adapt and adjust more quickly to needs and demands of our customers. And again, as you said earlier, Polly, at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, right? I mean, we don't do DevOps for ourselves. We don't take on something this monumental and this hard to do just because it makes us feel good about ourselves. We do it because our customers demand it. And so, velocity is about, adapting to customer demand more than it is about us making things just faster because we like to go fast.
Yep. Very true. Okay, let's see. Here's another question. Can you give an actual example of how tools can help improve this collaboration breakdown to improve, fix the barriers between ops and devs? Can tools help?
I think they can. Again, DevOps is a very human culture-oriented value system, right? The practices are around people. The tools are there to enable that collaboration. If you look at the tools that support the pipeline, you're looking at your deployment tools, release tools, testing tools, all of that automation is really there so that development to production is compressed, right? Very, very compressed down. What that means is that something that hits production is very close to the developers. People have heard the term shift left. The idea there is to get the consumer closer to the source. And I think that the automation tools out there, things again, the doctors and the chefs and the puppets and, all of these various tools that exist in the marketplace for the pipeline are there to really literally bring the developers right up to that precipice, right? They are right on the edge. They are seeing the product as it is being released to the consumer, which puts them in the role of operations, right? They're there to support the product now, not just say, hey, this, the age old, well, it worked on my computer. They see it in the real world, right? These tools give developers the ability to see their work as it will exist in the real world. That pushes them closer to the operational side. The tools also draw the operators back toward development because they are seeing the tool, they're seeing the product as it is actually being built and released. They're seeing the whole pipeline. So they now have a way of talking with their developers and saying, hey, this is an efficiency we found and we think it should go into the pipeline. And so I think that the tools themselves actually create greater visibility of the entire development lifecycle. That's the thing, is collaboration is part of it, but the visibility and transparency that it brings, that automation brings us, and I used to not believe this, by the way, about DevOps, if you read some of my early writings on it, but it really does. It promotes the visibility between development and operations, and that's what the knocking down of those silos really means, is transparency and trust.
Getting on the same page. Cool. All right, we got to wrap up here, but okay. I'm going to give you opportunity to answer a final question here, and maybe this is like a closing tip, but this person says, I've worked in IT ops for more than 20 years. Congratulations, by the way. What are a few things, 2 to 3, or you could just make it 1, Mark, that I should be doing now that I wasn't doing in the past as we make this transition to high velocity IT operations?
Wow, what's one thing you should be doing as a 20-year veteran of operations? Wow, okay, put me on the spot here, being as I was in ops for about 20 years. I would say that the one thing that I would recommend, if you haven't done it already, is I would go and I would sit down. I would sit down with one of my product teams. I would get together with one of my product teams and say, hey, show me what you're doing right now. What's coming? What isn't in our purview at the moment? Understanding the creative process of a developer makes it, I think, from an operational standpoint, makes it easier to understand how to support that developer. Operations people, our job is a zero-sum game, right? We have to keep things running. We don't have the luxury of creating new and exciting stuff. So we have to support those that do get to create the new and exciting stuff. I used to be very unhappy as an operator because I didn't get to create new and exciting stuff. Well, guess what? You have a whole bunch of people who are aching to collaborate with you now in a DevOps environment. Sitting down with them and understanding their creations and their creative process and what they're thinking about doing in the next iteration, I think it's very cathartic. I think it makes you feel like, wow, I'm part of it now, and I can actually, maybe I can even make some suggestions like, hey, this feature would be really, really cool if I was a user. So talk to your developers, get with them, see what they're doing, find out what they're doing. Find out how you can help them get there. We didn't do that in operations when I was in operations. So, we were just like waiting for the next shoe to drop.
So, of course, sitting down with somebody today is probably on the computer. But anyway, okay, this has been great. I'm sorry we didn't quite get to all the questions. We had some wonderful questions. I really appreciate everybody staying with us today. Mark, thank you so much. A really fantastic discussion. I'm always learning something new when I chat with you. So hopefully we'll get to chat again soon. And just a quick look at some upcoming events that we have here. You can get more information about those at our website, OpsRamp.com, on our events page. As well, at Beyond20, go to Beyond20.com courses to see upcoming DevOps training classes. So lots of great resources for everybody. Again, thank you so very much to Mark and to our wonderful audience, and hope everyone has a fantastic rest of the week.